right, hello everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Leafs Line podcast. I am your host, Mira Russo. Joining me for today's show, Evan Davis, Adamo Romoli, and Jared Rodenberg. You guys are back from the World Juniors. I know we had a bunch of spill of episodes where we were talking all the teams, dissecting each one. And first off, I want to thank you guys. We put up a lot of views, a lot of support on the channel, a lot of likes, subscribers. Everything was really good, and we really appreciate you guys helping us out. If you checked out Dynasty Sports Network, I hope you enjoyed. We have a lot of stuff coming out continuously as the days move along. So if you enjoy that, favorite it on your tabs if you want, or just follow us on social media. We'll always be there. You'll see the Leafs Line contact and everything else. And you can see it on your screen too if you're new to the show as well. DynastySportsNetwork.ca. Type it into your web browser. Look it up on all your social media platforms. You'll find us. We're there, and a lot of content will be coming your way. But we're here today. We've got a lot of things to talk about. Off the top, the Toronto Maple Leafs. We've got the Carolina Hurricanes. And of course, the Edmonton Oilers, who has been just a mediocre team once again. It's the same problems for this group in Alberta. And we're going to kind of pose the question about Ken Holland. Maybe he's at stake. Maybe he's someone who we should start getting a little bit of knowledge about why he should be on the hot seat. We'll get our takes in just a little bit. Let's kick it off, guys, with the Leafs. Again, Leafs Line podcast. If you're here for the Toronto Maple Leafs and their news, we're in the right spot. All right. So this team, they have been, nothing has really changed since they came out of winter break. Christmas break. I guess that's a winter break for them, considering it is one of their longer breaks during the year. Winners of 3 straight, including a thumping over Tampa on home soil prior to that break. The team took home their second consecutive overtime win last night against the St. Louis Blues in a barn burner of a game. Samsonov picks up his, I believe I have his 11th win of the season, despite picking up another sub 900 save percentage in his 3rd consecutive start. I don't see this concerning Leaf fans, considering he put up back-to-back shutouts earlier in the month. So again, he's been red hot and he's been getting it done. And hey, at the end of the day, all that matters is the wins and getting the 2 points. And he has done that very well. But again, they keep on rolling, and coming out of the Christmas break, they're reaping the benefits of it. They're hot play over the last 20 games. Jared, I know you sent the stat to our group chat earlier today, but 15-2-3 over those last 20 games, 33 points during that span. And if you guys do not know, that's tied with the Leafs rivals and the best team in the league right now, the Boston Bruins. So safe to say they have been getting it done recently during this really successful stretch of play. Guys, we talked about Nylander a couple weeks ago. We don't talk about Nylander too much. Again, one of the more underrated players in the league. I think everyone can come to those terms. And if they haven't already, they gosh darn should be. But Adamo Romoli wasn't there. And if you know a little bit about Adamo Romoli and you've been following the channel, he loves William Nylander. He will do anything in his power at his job at Pro Hockey Life to get a William Nylander jersey. I'm surprised they still let him do it, but hey.
Second one's on the way, baby.
Second one's on the way. Can I ask which one it is?
What?
The jersey.
Getting?
Yeah, which jersey you throw? What are you throwing on the back? Reverse retro. We got the the outdoors.
I was thinking
last
of
year.
Doing actually this one like right behind me.
Is it the arenas?
Nylander on that one. Yeah, it's the arenas one, but then I have a home one coming in. It's blank.
Okay.
And my did I cut out there? I don't know if I cut out there.
No, you're good.
No, I'm good.
No Bieber jersey.
Froze up my screen. My Bieber jersey I put Matthews on, but I have a home one coming in. I got it from actually Seaver Play Sports.
Oh, those guys got deals all the time, man.
$55. Yep, are you kidding me?
So
I'm gonna throw on either Pierre Engvall, Timothy Liljegren, or David Camp.
David
Camp is a good
option. So like 3 guys who might not be on the team next year.
I love.
No, I'm waiting for one of them to resign. Even Mikey Guns, then
nice.
I'll do him. But
boy. All right. Well, a lot of William Nylander jerseys for you. Again, you've been following him more in depth than any of us. You love him. He's your boy. Can you comment on him, man? Like, what are you trying to say here about his play, his success with the team, and how I think in your mind, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but proving some of the haters wrong over the last couple weeks and this entirety of the season, because this guy doesn't stop. He scores the OT winner in last night's win over St. Louis, and a beauty that it was. 3rd star of the week, I think the week before when we were talking about him, but he's always in the tabloids. So what can you say about his journey this year in Fuego start to the year and how he's just been proving the haters wrong?
Yeah, honestly, he's been our best player this season. I don't think it's a hot take. He's been our leading goal scorer. He's a point behind Marner for the lead. He has more goals. So I'm sorry, goals are just kind of worth more. That's how it works. Yep. He's flat out been our best player. Anyone who's followed his career knows that this isn't a surprise. This isn't a shocking season for Nylander. He's always been capable of this. He's always done this. It's just the numbers are starting to come in now. He's always been that dominant when he's been on the ice. And now the pucks, it's going in for him a lot more. I have his stats up beside me. He's shooting 17%, which is kind of high compared to his career, at least, because I think he's a career I don't have it. Come on.
I'd say around 6-7%. Is that too low?
No. 13. He's about 13 career percent.
So he's not over
a little bit better. He does have a 17% shot though. Like that, like you see William Nylander shoot, he has one of the best shots in the league too, and no one talks about that. Everyone, we're not ready for this discussion, but he's one of the best defensive players on the team as well. That's not a hot take. It's not. The analytics back it up. He's top 20 in takeaways. He looked at the goal he scored last night.
I love that what he did to Tarasenko. That was amazing.
Like
I still I don't know if I'm ready to give him one of the top defensive players on the team, but like
debate why not? Debate why not?
Okay, really, I still like. He's not your David Kampf. He's not your guy that's kind of. I don't know.
Why not? He is though.
He's in a much better spot than we were talking about him last year.
He's not penalty killing. He can penalty kill. He has the stick for it. Like if we see, he's a little sneaky wizard with his stick. He's no. Okay, I'll take Marner. I'll take Kampf. I'll take Engvall. I'll take Matthews. I don't know about this season, but like maybe saying one of the top is like a stretch. I don't think he's
okay. I think that's where we're going. Just because there are a lot of guys I take above him in terms of defensive ability, but like that is not to take away from what William Nylander's doing.
No, he's been great defensively this year.
He's this year. I don't know if that's the only thing is I don't know if he's previously been so great defensively. That's why I'm not ready yet.
He's never been bad. He's never. Everyone thinks he's just because it looks like he floats around.
He's had some big blips, and that's why it's been hurting him a lot more in the past. Like some big that people blow out of proportion. I will say that.
Yeah,
there's
you're right.
You mean like pulling up on
body checks or stuff like that, not coming back and
we remember those games against Montreal.
We've talked about it here on the show. So like it's been said here. It's been said in the Twitterverse. Wherever other social media platforms.
Performer, guys. Don't forget that.
I do just want to add though, like when you're talking about Nylander offensively, I looked at like how his shot percentage is 17%. When Matthews tucked 60 last year, his shot percentage was also 17, and Nylander's on pace for 50 goals this year. So, and Matthews hasn't been as great goal scoring wise this year. His shot percentage is down astronomically to almost 11%. So Nylander's definitely been carrying the load goal scoring wise for this Toronto Maple Leafs team.
And I think that's what you kind of want to see from a player like Nylander at this point in his career with the Leafs. We've seen him grow. We've seen him develop with this team. Now you're seeing him not just continuously develop, take over. He's all over the puck. Adamo, you mentioned his defensive metrics are off the chart. He's been playing a much better defensive game, and you even threw him in one of the top categories, which I'd even agree with on this team right now. And you know me, I've had my problems with William Nylander in the past on the other side of the blue line. But this year he's proven time and time again, especially with that goal that he scored last night, that he's capable of making the changes, the necessary ones, and in the necessary times, picking off plays and going up the other way. And we all knew he had that goal scoring touch. Now we're seeing a lot more inflated. And yeah, I don't think that is a hot take at all, what you mentioned off the top either. He is our top player. I don't really think it's too crazy close. Like he has been getting it done everywhere. And that's what you want from a guy like him. And another thing that he has under his belt, he proves everything wrong. He proves everything right for himself in the playoffs. He is a playoff performer, one of the very few on this team. And I think the Leafs are just gosh darn lucky that they got him right now and he's producing the way they are. But the thing about the Leafs and William Nylander, I want to kind of shift from him because he's been so great individually. It sort of blended itself in with the team and how they've played recently. And he's been a big supporter in the success of this group thus far. What is still, I want to ask the question to you guys. We know regular season. We entered the season with it being meaning nothing too crazy. It kind of changed when they started off really poorly and said the regular season does mean something because they're falling behind a little bit, but now they're back to where we expected them to be. And some might even argue a little bit higher than where we expected them to be. But what are the expectations lie in the next 40 something games or so? What's the end goal by game 82 at the end of this season? What are you guys expecting to see from this group once we hit that point? Because New Year's are right around the corner. It's a new year. A lot of teams are going to come out hungrier. It's a new Leaf. A lot of different things are going to come into play. But what are the expectations? Dom, I'll start with you, working my way to Jared. What are you expecting to see from the Toronto Maple Leafs by game 82? I'm not talking playoffs because you know the expectations and where they lie there. But this team has been scorching. I think they're a top 5 team in the standings overall right now. What is more left for them to prove in the regular season?
go beat Boston. There's plenty to prove. They aren't first in their division.
Yeah.
Like, let's not sit there let's not whine and complain. Oh, we have to play Tampa. Go get a go play a wild card team. Like, Boston, they're not sustaining this pace. As good as Boston is, these guys are not the 16-7 or the 15-16 Warriors. Like, flat out, if they go and win, what would they be? They've won. Holy crap!
Dude,
that's a
they
ridiculous
only
record.
got 4
If
regulation
they go
losses.
win like 67 wins, they're not that good. They're not doing that. That's something that's a hot take.
No, I agree.
I know they've had goaltending. Yeah, at some point, Olmark's got to slow down. At some point, they have to go through like a little blip. I know they lost last night in a shootout to the Senators.
Yeah.
That would be the time whenever Boston starts to slip, because it's bound to happen. That's just how math works. Regression is bound to happen. And that's when the Leafs need to strike. They need to get hot. They need to stay hot, because as of right now, Boston is still 9-0-1 in their last 10.
Yeah,
So,
it feels like every step that the Leafs take, the Bruins are taking
And
2 or 3 steps further, right?
The Bruins haven't lost in regulation at home yet, and we're
entering 2023, man.
Yeah,
Like,
we're entering
it's a ridiculous
2023,
streak.
and they're 19-0-2 at home this year, which is just unbelievable.
But going off of the point of making those statement wins, again, those wins against the Boston Bruins, I don't think they faced them too much this season. But that win against Tampa, they did.
Yeah,
exactly. They handed them, I think it was one of their first losses at the beginning
they
of the
beat
season.
The Bruins 2-1.
Yeah, very big win. But again, all the theme around each team changes as the year goes on, right? The teams are at different stages. The Bruins are still at that stage where they were red hot out of the gates. They're still there, which is really concerning and kind of scary if you're an Atlantic Division opponent like the Leafs are. But those games against the Tampa Bay Lightning that they got under their belt, that 4-1 dominant win where they just wiped the floor with a team that they lost to in the first round last year, those are the type of games where I think if I'm going to pin one thing that they got to get done, it's got to be getting those wins in a wide order and lining them up as much as they can. Jared, what do you think is one thing that this team has to prove other than getting those big, I guess Mike Babcock used to call them those measuring stick games, those wins in that category? What do you think is something else that they got to prove? Is it individual, maybe some personal streaks, guys scoring this amount of goals, X amount of assists, stuff like that? Or is it a more team thing and they got to trend to the right direction in order to get to game 82?
I think if this team is going to do anything when we really want them to in the playoffs, they need to be focusing not really on the individual accomplishments. Those are all great. I want them to be focusing on getting every possible win. And yes, as you mentioned, that's really important to get those wins against teams like Tampa and Boston. But as well, we've been known to kind of take games off against teams like Arizona and Montreal. So I want to see us continue to put the pedal to the metal. I forget which team it was against recently, but it was Anaheim. We absolutely dominated them, and I want to see more of that. I don't want to see us taking games off, making it way too close for comfort against teams like that. I want to see us play like the great team I know the Toronto Maple Leafs are capable to be, dominate those teams, and I'm going to even take it a step above Adamo. I want us to catch Boston and win the Atlantic Division as much as anyone, but I think the Leafs since October, they had a terrible start to the season, but since then, they've been one of the hottest teams in the league. I want them to prove it, and yes, I don't care about the President's Trophy for the title, but I want the Leafs to finish with the best possible record out of any team because I think they have played that good, and I want us to guarantee the best possible chances of us finding success in the playoffs is to get the best possible matchup. Don't shoot yourself in the foot with bad losses that are going to take you away from that. I want them to come together as a team, be committed to, obviously every team wants to win every single game. That's not realistic, but win as much games as possible, win the President's Trophy, finish as the best team in the regular season, and then focus on what comes next in the playoffs with what will be an easier matchup.
And I have to agree. I mean, getting that successful hockey, and they've done that again, like I mentioned off the top of the show in this Leaf segment, 15-2-3 in their last 20 games. That's good for, I think, I'd say probably second most in the league. I know the Bruins probably got that best record, and they're identical in that exact same category. So you need to keep up the successful play. You need to keep it up on all 3 positions, goaltending, defense, and the forward position. You got to win those big games. And the one thing I do want to stress as well is that the goaltending for this team, Kyle Dubas, he was really biting the bullet heading into the season. Everyone was saying, I don't know, this could be a little shaky. He looks like a genius right now. Matt Murray, again, heading into the new year. I know they still got a couple more games to play, but as of right now, Matt Murray is 8-2-2, and Samsonov is 11-3-0. Those are very good metrics, very good numbers, and you need that to sustain throughout the regular season to give yourself a really good chance of catching Boston, catching those bigger teams, and kind of like setting the ground between you and the teams below you in the Atlantic Division, because it is one of the more competitive divisions in the league. I want to make our way to the one last thing on the Toronto Maple Leafs front. It revolves around the fines that just came out as we were kind of hopping on the show, and it's regards to the fines from the CBA. And Evan, you were explaining me this off the top of the show. I'll turn it over to you just after I explain to the viewers. I guess it was the CBA. They got into a little bit of trouble, a bit of hot water with them for violating the no team sort of rule where they couldn't fly and practice over the holidays, and they left at 10:30. I believe it was the night before. Obviously, they went to St. Louis, and if they waited an hour and a half, they'd be fine. But they didn't do that. I guess they had to get in, and we all know how the weather was over the Christmas break. Guess they did that, got fined for it. It was $100,000. Now that's nothing for MLSE because, again, it's MLSE. They got all the money in the world. If you've ever been to a Leaf game and you've ever bought a hot dog, you'll know that's where that money is going towards. But again, they get fined for it, and Keefe was also fined $25,000 for, I mean, what every coach kind of gets these days, talking back to the ref, disagreeing with the call, and getting the stick from it. I want to ask you guys, Evan, I'll go with you. You tuned into the game last night. What were your thoughts on the calls from Keefe's perspective, and even in more so on the CBA's aspect of it, where that protocol was violated? Is it something that could have been a little bit more flexible, or do you agree it should be set in stone, and stuff like the weather and those really big changes kind of steps in compared to what we saw some other teams do over the holidays and just complete cancel games and postpone them for later dates? What were your thoughts on the CBA standing, as well as how Keefe was fined with the ref talk?
Yeah, the CBA stuff I think is just really stupid. Just I obviously these rules weren't created like just last week or something. Like the Leafs very well knew that this could be a possibility, and that they probably were like, screw it, we'll take $100,000 fine because we're not flying at 2 o'clock in the morning for a 7 p.m. game that same night. Like that's just not happening. I think they were just like, we're gonna bite the bullet. We already know this is coming, so why not? And they ended up getting the win, so they'll take the 2 points from it. The thing with Sheldon Keefe really pissed me off because that game was just so stupid the way the officiating went. Like usually I like kid and I'm like, yeah, Leaf fans are just biased, obviously, just because it's their team. But like the refs were horrible. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember who it was that got the high sticking. Was it Malgin or something, or who?
He's
Who
not here
lost?
anymore. I think it was Aston Reese, no?
Oh, Aston
Yeah,
Reese. Yeah, it
it
was
was
Aston Reese. Like that dude was about to lose a tooth, and no call. He's bleeding
He's
from
so
his
bloody.
mouth. Like 10 times out of 10, that's called. And I don't get, like, I love Wes McCauley. I think he's one of the best referees, just from an entertainment standpoint as well. But that was a swing and a miss opportunity there. And then just to see St. Louis tie it, I was just like, oh well, fuck. Like, I mean, if Toronto loses this game, like the media is just, they're gonna love it, but then they're also gonna like just be like, what happened? But overall, I thought Sheldon Keefe had every right to be furious with the calls, and I don't think he crossed a line, in my opinion. Like, it's not like he pulled the ref aside and started barking at his face. Like, he
He
just
didn't throw anything.
expressed himself. Like he didn't do anything, and that's a hefty fine. I mean, I don't know how much he makes a year, but still, 25,000 is 25,000. Like that's a year of tuition and a half for us at school, guys.
Yeah,
Like
he's getting a
that's a
nice
lot.
beating. He's getting a nice beating from MLSE as well. It's like, what's going on, man? We got 2 fines back to back hours. We got to keep it down. We got to keep the prices still up. Come on, what's going on? But hey, Sheldon Keefe gets fined. MLSE likely paying for it. Leafs get fined as well, $100,000. Jared, you want to comment kind of quickly on what kind of transpired over the last couple hours with those fines?
Oh, well, in the case of the CBA fine, I do agree with Evan in the sense that, yeah, they did make the right call taking the fine because obviously the Leafs know they could afford it. And the fact is, a flight from Toronto to St. Louis is about 2.5 to 3 hours. And if they were to have waited until right when the clock struck midnight, they wouldn't have landed until around 3-ish in the morning. Then you take into account the drive from the airport to the hotel, then check-in times, then all of that. So they're not really going to bed until 5-ish in the morning, and that's just not acceptable on a game day. So yeah, I do think the Leafs made the right call traveling at the time they did, and the fact that they were even penalized for it I get that it's a written rule, but it's one of those examples of it is a written rule, but it's a dumb written rule, and it is worth criticizing. Yes, obviously, the Leafs blatantly broke the rule that says you can't travel on December 26th. But I just don't think it's right to penalize a team for that when the alternative is you have scheduled a game on the 27th and you're basically expecting teams to not get to bed on those days until 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I just don't think that's gonna, even from the league's perspective, I don't think you're asking for the best possible product in that return game. Not even to talk about Christmas, everyone's eating, whatever. But then on top of that, the fact that the guys aren't even getting to bed until 6 in the morning, like you're not going to have a good product if you make it so teams have to wait at the airport doing nothing and are only allowed to travel at a certain time. I think it's stupid. And I think penalizing Sheldon Keefe for this call kind of went away from what the purpose of that rule is. The purpose of the rule is to not disrupt players' holidays. I get that. I understand that. But it's not like Keefe was grabbing players out of their house at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. No, we got to get to the airport. We got to hit a flight at 5. It's they had their holiday with their family. Let's say sometime in the evening, they headed over to the airport to meet the team. They were all waiting there. It was 10:30. They're ready to go. There's no difference between it's already nighttime, like it's 10:30 or it's 12 o'clock. It doesn't matter, but just in the rule, it's like, nope, you have to wait that extra hour and a half doing nothing. I think it's ridiculous. Regardless, then when in the case of the Sheldon Keefe situation, yeah, he has every right to be mad, and especially he has every right to be mad at Wes McCauley in particular. And when you looked at some of the lip reading, it's very clear he's calling out Wes McCauley to begin with, because Wes McCauley has a previous history of kind of screwing over the Leafs in calls like that. And one of the calls, not the Zach Aston Reese one where he got the stick to the mouth, there was the other call where it was a pick. St. Louis very clearly did a pick before scoring a goal, and Sheldon Keefe got mad about it because on the broadcast, they're like, oh, no one really gets called for a pick anyways. Well, there is a team I know about who got called for a pick. That's the Toronto Maple Leafs in Game 7 of what would have been a tying goal. And it's the same ref who was on the ice. And that game was the ref that was on the ice in St. Louis. So, yeah, I think Sheldon Keefe had every right to be mad, and I don't think he crossed the line at all. Yeah, on the broadcast, they're saying, oh, he's freaking out, he's going crazy. Well, I think you would do the exact same thing. And even I was talking to my dad on the phone right before getting in here. He was the coach of my brother's select team, and he was a crazy coach. You heard him screaming all the way over from the crowd. But he's like, I gave it to the refs every single time. He even told me a story of the time he got ejected from a game for calling out a ref for a BS call. And that's in select hockey with high schoolers. And this is an NHL coach in the middle of a National Hockey League game where he's trying to at least get consistency in calls. And there was no consistency there. So damn right he had every right to be mad there.
Yep, and he was heated. I mean, as you can see, and I mean, listen, calls will always be calls. Look, I don't think the NHL is ever going to move from bad calls. Again, Evan, you mentioned Wes McCauley for an entertainment reason. Sometimes he's not always in there for the right entertainment, right? It could go either way.
Well, we're
with a lot of
talking
these
about it
refs.
now.
I guess so.
So
He's made
he
his
knows
mark.
what he's got the clicks. He knows what he's doing.
I guess the NHL knows what they're doing too when they're botching calls left, right, and center. And it has been a common theme throughout the league, not just the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think it's just bias against us. It has been always throughout the league. But I kind of want to move and shift gears to the Carolina Hurricanes. I think we've done enough for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Again, kind of all you got to really know. William Nylander has been the leader on this team all throughout the season. You've seen him pick up the pace over the last couple of weeks, and it's been probably the best series of hockey we've seen him play in a while. You could debate that all you want. And then you can also take from the Toronto Maple Leafs the fines, and of course, just a red hot team, man. What they got to get done, how they got a lot of things circled on their agenda for things heading into 2023 and what they want. But Carolina, let's get into them. This team has been just as hot, if not even more. Winners of 9 straight games. After posting a mediocre kind of record to kick off the season, they are in full force and proving to everyone that was the team we were expecting to see, and why a lot of people who had them at the top of their division predictions are kind of sitting where they are right now. It's been kind of led from the back out with this group. A lot of the strength has been in goaltending. Frederik Andersen, guess what? He went down with an injury again. This time it is an upper body injury.
Shocker.
Yeah, exactly. Shocking injury from Frederik Andersen. But Antti Ranta and Piotr, how do you say his name?
Peter
Kochev. But what amazes me the most, and I was dying of laughter when I saw his interview, they were chanting his name, Coochie. So that's something to kind of monitor as the as the season plays out. I've never heard of a nickname like that, but hey, he likes it. He's a gentleman about it. So
That should make for
all
a good giveaway night.
yeah, all credit to him. But no, he's been red hot for the Canes. So has Ranta. Ranta, I believe, is winners in 5 straight for the Canes. And Kochkov, I'm gonna botch his name a bunch today. Now I'm getting those World Junior jitters.
I think Kochechkov.
Kochechkov. We'll go with Kochechkov. Yeah, we'll go with Kochechkov. He has posted just one sub 900 outing during the Canes hot streak. And Ranta, like I mentioned, secured his 5th straight win in shutout fashion against the Blackhawks yesterday. I want to focus on the goaltending before we focus on anything else with the Canes. This might be a little bit of a hot take. You guys tell me. I'll start with you, Adamo. Do the Canes have a top 3 goaltending tandem in the league right now?
Ooh, top 3. Okay, let's try to figure these out.
I was trying to as well, and this could differ, but
Yeah.
hey, I want to hear your thoughts.
Ullmark and Swayman are probably
They gotta be in there.
right?
That's a lock.
They gotta be in there. Shoot, let's look at the top of the league, see who's on there.
I think the Leafs could.
But
Maybe
I was
crack it.
gonna say
Like I think
Samsonov
so.
and Murray.
Maybe not
I'd
as
low key throw in Vegas too with Aiden Hill and Logan
Stop.
Thompson. Dude, I'm just saying if you look at their
Oh my
records,
God.
I'm just saying when you look at their records, you can laugh, but the U Sports legend has been doing fairly
Sports legend.
well.
I don't know. Like, is it a fair thing to throw them in a top 3? I think maybe top 5 could be a lock, but
I think they're
Kochekov-
top 3 for sure.
Yeah, Kachuk, him. He's
Kochekov.
Gucci.
Gucci.
That's
Well,
his
let's refer to him as
Gucci.
Gucci on the show. Is that cool?
Yes.
Sorry,
Gucci.
Mom.
No, it's Gucci.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to when you think of goaltending duos, Tampa, you kind of got Tampa's just Vasilevsky. So
Well, that's the thing. I think a tandem, to qualify it as a tandem, it's a split right down the middle, which I think we've been seeing a little bit more coming from Carolina.
I would put Boston,
Boston, Carolina,
Toronto.
I was gonna say in terms of goals
pretty
against
good, yeah.
average. I'm looking at the list. The first team that has both of their goalies at the top of goals against average is Samsonov and Murray. It's Toronto. So I definitely am putting them up
in
there.
all fairness, they haven't played as
They
many
haven't played as
games.
many games.
Fair.
You see, Samsonov he's fallen off a hill. We'll just call it what it is.
Yeah.
So
But,
as of right now, yeah, I think it's fair to put Toronto.
Jared, what about you?
Yeah,
You got Toronto in maybe a top 3? Or
well-
sorry, the Carolina in a top 3?
Yeah, I think I'm agreeing with the top 3 being Boston, Carolina, and Toronto. I
that's my
think
list as well.
the fact that, especially considering that Carolina isn't going with their 1-2, they're going with their 2-3 with their starting goalie being injured. I think that's a big factor as to why they deserve all the praise in the world right now. Because their guy going into the year, who was their starting goaltender, Freddie Anderson, he is the least amount of games played out of all of them. And the fact that Ranta and Kochechkov or Kuchi have been kind of carrying the weight right now and thriving in that situation, I think they absolutely deserve the praise. And I think no question, at least in terms of a this year standpoint, I don't think there's a question that they are a top 3 goalie tandem in the league.
And this team, let's just go through a bit of history. Y'all go to you too as well, but they've been winners on all the goaltending aspects for this group. They have never really had a really big problem in goal, like a lot of teams we'll talk about in just a bit, but a lot of teams have had in the past. These guys have been really steady with the guys that they put in goal, the guys they trust, keeping the pucks out of the back of the net, if you will. And yeah, it's been proven dividends for them ever since.
What? I found one that might be up there. The Islanders, Sorokin and Varlamov.
That's a good one.
Both up there. They're both up there in save percentage and goals.
But I think if you want to just say it at this, Carolina is
top
a top 3
Very good.
or
Very good.
within that range. And I think that's a big testament to how successful they are. Evan, are they your top 3? Are they in your top 3?
I dare you to say Vegas.
No, I'm just trying to look at because Antti Ranta these last 5 games has been incredible for the team, especially given the fact that Kuchi has a bad back. But I don't know. I feel like you can make the argument that Carolina's number 1, just given the fact that Boston is more, I would say Boston's more 80-20 in terms of Ullmark, Swayman.
Yeah, Ullmark's the starter.
But I think, but I'm just saying in terms of even production, Swayman is 7-2-2. So he's been on the ice for 4 of their 7 losses, but he's also played 75% of the amount of games as Ullmark has played, who I think is 18-1. So I think when you look at it, like Antti Ranta's 8-2-2 with a 2.73 and just a below 900, but the last 5 games he's been really, really good for this team. I think you can make the case that Carolina has the best depth of goaltending as we make our way into the second half of the year. But no, I think the top three definitely resides within the Eastern Conference. I could make a case that Vegas might be in the top 5 or 6, just given
You can't.
when we're talking tandems, like we're talking two goalies here.
Logan Thompson is 20th in save percentage, and Aiden Hill is 32nd.
That's good enough.
Yeah,
That's good
there's
enough.
that argument out the window.
Yeah, save percentage. Save percentage is the big key one here. If you're keeping
rest my
pucks at a good
case.
rate,
That's
I
good
think you're doing
enough
your
for
job.
me.
They started out pretty good. I will say. Like,
Vegas
Logan
was
Thompson
running the
pretty good.
table for a little bit at the beginning
Yeah,
of
they
the
were
year.
running the show. Now they've
Yeah,
pulled down a little bit.
But I definitely do think that, I mean, for Carolina, I feel like they always, like as you said, they always go on their back end. Like offense almost seems like a secondary for them, which is just crazy given the talent that they have up front with Svechnikov and Aho and Natchez, and even defensively with Brent Burns, who I thought was a great. I don't even know. I can't remember what they gave up for him, but
It was free agent edition.
no, they traded for him because he still has a contract that was with San Jose. They traded for Brent Burns.
Yeah,
sorry. The
was
free agent
great.
edition was Pacioretty. My mistake.
Yeah, who hasn't even
No,
shown up
Pacioretty was
yet.
also a trade, but yeah.
Pacioretty, they
You know what? I was at Cantor though, so I went with whatever.
Chalk it up to
My
that.
bad.
Someone said,
Over
yeah,
two.
no, you didn't hear the great return Vegas got. His name's Future Considerations.
Yeah,
love
that was
one.
funny.
Okay, relax. I think I'd call that a free agent edition.
But,
yeah,
no,
no.
I you want to wrap it
I
up?
mean, it's a
Yeah.
dummy thing.
Say I'd say that they're number one, just given the fact that it's more even.
Yeah, and I mean
with those two production wise.
What makes Carolina so dangerous, kind of what you said, Evan, is that it's kind of feels secondary, the offense and the defense. The goaltending has always been sort of stealing the show. We've been seeing it over their hot streak. And you mentioned a couple names, Natchez, Teravainen, and all these guys who they still have on the forward end and have somewhat got it done this year. There's one player that I do want to focus on, and I'm going to save those talks for Carolina, all the hype around them and their storyline.
Hold off 1 second, because I do want to just add one more thing, because I forgot about this. Over their last in that 9-game winning streak, besides that little blunder to Philadelphia that occurred in that horrendous third period, they've given up they've given up like 13 goals in their last 9 games. And 5 of those was in that like horrible debacle that with Philadelphia. So yeah, they in that 9-game winning streak, 3 shutouts.
They've been cooking, man. The goaltending's been getting it done. Defense has been getting it done. They've been locking it all down. The one thing I do want to save for a little while in the future for our podcast is just to talk around this team and how they're going to slay those demons of the playoffs. That's been the storyline with this team since we were heading into the season. So I want to still put a pin in that because I don't think it's going to change regardless of how we go down the road. But I do want to talk about this thing, Evan, you mentioned before we hopped on the show. And it just amazes me because we rarely see deals like this go through in the NHL. They're called offer sheets. If you do not know, it's when guys are RFAs and they have to get they want to leave, or a team wants them and they're interested in them, and they offer money, picks at some point, depending on how it plays out, and they get that player. And the Carolina Hurricanes did just that with Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who was residing on the Montreal Canadiens in 2021. During the summer, they offer sheeted him, gave up a first-round pick. And if you look at this year, you can look at a lot of years if you want, but if you look at this year primarily, just 10 points in 35 games played. It clearly has not gone the way of him. I believe he's not even playing in the top 6 for this group.
Yep.
He's their fourth line center.
Yeah, he's your 4th line center, and you gave up a first-round pick for him. You would think a guy in a blue and white uniform would be doing this, but no, this is what's happening in Carolina. Guys, let's talk about it, man. Kotkaniemi, what's going on? I don't know. He has an 8-year deal. Evan, you want to lead us off, and then we'll work our way down the order?
I mean, like I'm actually, like, I'm being serious when I'm saying this. Like, I've heard from people that I've been in a room with people that were close to Kotkaniemi in Montreal. His attitude just sucks. Like, it just seems like him being picked 3rd overall might have been the worst thing that ever happened in his NHL career, because based on what I've heard is that, like, he kind of just assumed he would be in the NHL by day one, and like him making the NHL roster was just like a for sure thing. Like he wasn't even going to sniff what it was Charlotte at the time, the Charlotte Checkers, which is their AHL team. And then it just got to points where it was like how he is in Carolina now, playing in the bottom six, and they would give him chances in Montreal to play in the top six. And when it didn't work out, they would send him back to the bottom six, and then he'd be like, "Why the hell am I in the bottom six?" It's like, well, because you're not playing well. And I, what I've heard is that it was a very easy deal to ship away Kakanyemi. Like people were almost surprised that Carolina wanted him this badly on their team, and I think it was the worst thing that ever could have happened to them, because as we know, they then locked him up for 8 years at around roughly 5 million a year. So you're not trading him unless you attach another first to that. So now you're gonna give up 2 first round picks for someone who's not even gonna be on your roster anymore. Like they're screwed. I think they tried to develop him. It's not working out. 10 points in 35 games is a slow weekend for McDavid, or maybe even a slow 2 games for McDavid. And I know I'm comparing the best player in the world to him, but I'm just saying, like, 10 points in 35 games at the NHL is not something that you want. And now GMs in Montreal are laughing at the fact that they were so desperate to get Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
And it feels as though the move, and this was my initial thought I don't know about you guys, but this was my initial thought when it came out. I thought it was a little forced, a little bit, just because I didn't think Kotkaniemi fit the mold of Carolina. You mentioned that they were kind of a secondary goaltending first. It was always been their strong suit, and then the forward, like the strong core players, was something that they really flexed in their strengths. And then it was all about the depth scoring. Kotkaniemi has never really shown to be a depth scorer, not even a potent, lethal core player that you could build around kind of score. So I just kind of felt that there's a guy there for some reason, which I can't wait to hear in the far, far future as to why they went out and got him. But it just felt that it wasn't really a big need for them, and it hasn't, as you can see, has not fit whatsoever for both parties. So, Damo, you want to comment on Kotkaniemi, his situation with Carolina, and how it's just been a constant struggle year in, year out with this guy? And I honestly do think, again, we can't really confirm this, but what Evan's saying, it could be a very big work ethic issue, because I've watched a lot of games that he's played. Again, he's played numerous times against the Maple Leafs during his time in Montreal, and it always looked to be a work ethic kind of thing, because you kind of know what it is once you see it, right? And his stats kind of do imply that it could be as well. So, what are your thoughts on him? And are we ever going to see him break out of this slump? It's kind of turning into a career thing now. It can't be too much of a slump anymore.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's much of a slump at all that Kotkaniemi's bad. I'm just pulling up his numbers right now. Off the bat, Kotkaniemi, and this one I don't have in front of me, but I just know as a fact. Analytically, he's always been a very good defender, or dare I say, elite defender. That being said, he's making how much?
I believe it's 5
like 4.8. It's like
That's
it's
ridiculous.
4.8 million. I was
The
rounding up
fact
to
that
5.
it starts with a 4, it shouldn't even start with a 2. Like, being great defensively, and providing literally no offense is not good enough. You basically got yourself Zach Aston Reese, because Zach Aston Reese is notoriously an elite analytical defender, and you look in Toronto, he's been kind of that. But I know I hate we're bringing it back to the Leafs, but yeah, he has not been good for Carolina, and it stems from he's never been a great skater. He's always had like a wonky stride. It's never been a good stride. And that's just something that he's never fixed. You put that with the fact that he like isn't that great, at all. He's never shown that he's, except for in Finland. Finland, I'm assuming he was pretty good, hence why he was taken 3rd overall. But even if I remember correctly, that was a bit of a stretch.
He wasn't even that.
Yeah.
He wasn't even that
Yeah.
dominant offensively, like in the U20s or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
He wasn't a big name until like a month and a bit out from the draft, and all of a sudden the scouts were raving about him. But like he never heading into that draft was a top prospect at all. And he pretty much shocked the world with the last few weeks ahead of the draft kind of, all of a sudden Montreal's really interested in this kid. Look for him to potentially go early. He ended up going 3rd overall, but he never really showed consistently, at least, that he warranted that pick at all.
Yeah, no,
The-
he's
the-
not very great.
The next pick after Kotkaniemi was Brady Kachuk.
Yeah.
Like, who
Jeez.
fire
How
the
quick it
Who was
changed.
scouting
supposed to go
team?
there? Or no,
And
Medina.
Moritz Seider
Medina
was
supposed to go
6th
third.
that year, I believe.
No,
Seider wasn't picked that year,
Sider
buddy.
wasn't that
That
draft.
was picked in the 2019
Oh, it was the
draft.
2019.
It
Okay,
was
Yeah.
Zadina that went.
Zadina went, I
Zadina.
think, 5th to the Red Wings, but he was
six.
No,
Yeah,
no,
he was supposed,
5th
he was supposed
was
to
the
go third,
Arizona
though.
pick.
yeah.
Yeah.
But still, there's
Oh,
just so
man.
much talent that's been drafted after these guys. Honestly, this draft has been kind of
Oh.
a dud.
2018, yeah, it wasn't a very notable draft.
I will say,
Outside
good
of-
job on Montreal. You guys got a first round pick out of it, and what'd you do with it? Did anyone know?
They traded it for Dvorak, right?
They traded it for Christian Dvorak, who is equally as bad. He has 4 more points this season,
Wow.
7 goals, 7 assists,
What
and is
what,
making the same
what
amount
first
of money.
round year
And
was
is older.
that they
What are you
traded it?
doing?
But what year was
Um,
that pick? God, if it's this
Uh,
year's draft, that trade's gonna look so fucking bad.
I think no, it was last year.
It had to be
Thank-
last year. They had
thank
to pull a
God.
throw
Yeah,
pick.
because if
it
you
was,
did
it
that
wasn't,
even-
it wasn't a trade; it was an offer sheet. Like
Yeah.
compensation was the first rounder.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Montreal sent it to Arizona, and Arizona picked.
Yeah, just a
I
bad
don't know
deal
who
all
Arizona
around,
picked.
man. On all
Dude.
sides. But I mean, I don't know.
Who
is
won
there-
that? Like who?
Nobody really.
Who won this 3-team
teams,
trade?
like,
Honestly, you could
lost.
make a
Well,
case
I
for
guess-
Arizona.
Arizona,
Yeah,
you got a first round pick for like a third line
center, who's now their first line center.
Although, hear me out, boys. Christian Dvorak in 2015-16. Does anyone know where he played?
Oh, London Knights.
I haven't saw his shit today. I don't know if he has his hockey.
No,
games
he
out
was
of him.
on that team with Matthew Kachuk and like Marner or something.
Marner.
He was on Marner's line.
Mm.
Hear me out.
Winning
We're looking
team.
for a second line left winger. Hear me out. Hear me out.
Yeah.
Actually, I think Domi was on that team too.
Yeah,
I
Domi
really
was
want
on
Matt
that.
Domi. I really want Matt
That-
Domi.
that
Wow.
London Knights team was disgusting.
Oh my God, he was
The line.
gross.
No, Domi wasn't on that team. It was the line of. I was right. Matthew Kachuk, Mitch Marner, and Christian Dvorak were on that line,
Yeah,
and they combined for 330 points.
that's a lot of
I
points.
know my stuff.
That is a lot
Wow.
of points, sir.
I knew it was Matthew Kachuk.
Anyways, is there anything else you kind of want to say on Kotkaniemi? I think he
No,
can only go
like,
so far.
Yeah,
He
you
never
suck.
had that much hype around him. Like, aside from obviously he was drafted high, but he going into that year, he was never heading into that season expected to be a top 3 pick. He shocked the world a few weeks ahead of the draft by kind of getting the scouts' attention, being drafted high, and he's never lived up to that whatsoever.
Yeah.
Hear
And I
me
mean,
out. Oh, sorry.
no, go on.
Like, imagine if Bo Horvat was like made available a year earlier, and then Carolina uses that first round pick and like Seth Jarvis to get Bo Horvat. Like, how much better would that make Carolina to give like
I
To
don't
get-
think they would do like Seth Jarvis is playing on their top line. Like he's a
yeah,
big part
but
of
you
their
got to
team.
build. But like as I was saying with my dad, you got if you're going to build a championship roster, you got to build down the middle. Like as good as Seth Jarvis is, you can find another winger in free agency or whatever. I know he's great, but Bo Horvat is like 30 goals right now. Like you got to build down the middle. Like if you look at Tampa Bay, they spent all that money on a center because not all that money. They spent all the draft capital on a center in Blake Coleman because they knew they had to build down the middle. Championship teams, they built down the middle. You can look at any team that won the cup. Even Colorado last year, they built down the middle. Like you got to pay a premium for a center, and I think that like if you gave him Seth Jarvis in a first, I feel like that's the biggest win-win trade.
Let's stay on tabs with building a championship team and what it takes and the tools in which you need, because we're making our way to a team who it's kind of been rumored that they kind of have a bit of tools, not the toolbox, if you will. It's always the same topic with this team. I'm talking the Edmonton Oilers, and they're entering 2023 with the whole
my God,
mentality,
forgot
just
about
like
them.
us, on hey, new year, new me. Because listen, it's got to stop at some point. It's still the same problems. If you're new to the show and you haven't heard any of our Edmonton Oilers takes or talk, it's basically revolving around the same thing, really. And it's getting a little complicated to find new storylines with this group. McDavid and Draisaitl, they always steal the show. They're again once more leading the group or leading the standings in points, and they I don't got much help other than that. And I heard this take, and this is kind of what sparked me wanting to talk about Edmonton. I don't want to talk about this specifically because I think we are all in agreement that it is a pretty lightweighted take and
It's
just
a bad take. It's wrong.
it is. Yeah. John Scott, former NHLer, he made the comment on McDavid saying that wouldn't even put him in his top 5 list of players to build a playoff team around. This was said on the Dropping Gloves podcast. And
No
I don't,
free ads.
yeah,
No free ads.
I don't want
I
to.
think it's his own podcast.
Well, okay, that's a little skeptical if he's making that his own podcast. There's the credibility there, but
I know he has one.
I know he has one as well, and I wouldn't see it's why it wouldn't be the Dropping Gloves titled podcast. But hey, he makes that comment. I don't want to dispute it
Needs
just
media
because
training.
I think we're all in agreement that it is a pretty lonesome take. I do want to make comment on how this team is built, but we kind of talked about heading into the Edmonton Oilers segment where there's not enough depth. The goaltending has been once again, and as it always is, in shambles with the additions of with Stuart Skinner and the addition of Jack Campbell. And the one thing I want to focus on is Ken Holland and how he plays a role in all of this. Because again, he's the one responsible and in charge of scoping out and getting all the pieces that this team needs to go the distance. Well, these guys went the distance last postseason rather. And again, they fell in the Eastern Conference. Oh no, they went through the Western Conference. Were they?
They went to
no,
the
They
Western
lost in the
Conference
conference
final.
finals. They
Colorado,
got
Western
swept by
Conference.
Colorado.
There
They
you go.
got swept.
Confusing with
It
Calgary.
wasn't even
No.
close.
Yeah, they got swept after. Didn't they sweep Calgary?
No,
They
they
s-
lost.
no,
They won in
they-
5.
They won in 5.
5
Okay.
and then got swept. And
Winning 5 against Calgary, losing 4 against Colorado. A full switch of the storylines in the playoffs for this team. But it was enough to convince Ken Holland that this was the group he had to stick with, and this is the team that's going to get it done and push them. Not just if you went to the Western Conference final, now you're going to take that extra step further with this team and see what they could do in the Stanley Cup final this year. It hasn't really looked like that, guys. They're a mediocre team right now. I want to ask, are there any trades that can benefit this team specifically to help with either is that depth? Is it down the middle, like Evan said and emphasized, that possesses with championship winning teams? Is it goaltending? Once again, they thought they fixed it in the offseason with Campbell. That has been a whole fiasco. So what is it? Like, where does this solution lie? Jared, you were very prominent on the Edmonton Oilers throughout the postseason last year. I want to get your takes on where Ken Holland fits in this. And I know we always said this team was really good on paper, but it never really translated to on physical results. What needs to be said on paper now, trade wise, to maybe get this team better physically and in a better position to succeed than what they've been doing right now? Because, like I mentioned off the top, they're on the cusp. They're the last playoff spot in the league right now. So, what's going to change on paper for a trade with Ken Holland?
They need a better defensive core. Their defensive core is a joke. And I mean, it wasn't very strong last year in the playoffs, but credit to them. They put it together and found a way to at least look good out there. But they look brutal right now, and they're so easy to walk through. Their top defenseman is Darnell Nurse, who is a pure offensive defenseman. And they remind me of the Leafs of a few years ago where we used to just have Morgan Riley and no defensive defenseman to counter him. Now and I love Morgan Riley, but we needed a TJ Brody to at least have our offensive guy and our defensive guy who could shut things down and help out and fix the mistakes that an offensive defenseman like that is surely bound to make. And the Oilers just don't really have anyone that's going to counter when a guy like Darnell Nurse, an offensive defenseman, makes a mistake. So they need, obviously, it's easier said than done, and we're not giving them TJ Brody, but they need an equivalent to a type of defenseman like that. I know on Steve Dangle podcast, they always say there's the sword and there's the shield. They have the sword and Darnell Nurse. They need a shield type guy. Again, these are easier said than done. You're not going to get a Mackenzie Weegar or a guy like that. But they somehow need to find their way into getting a defensive shutdown defenseman because it is so clear they're just not good enough defensively. And again, I'm going to preface this. It's something that I didn't say enough last year because, listen, I was very critical on Edmonton all year long last year, and they ended up going far in the playoffs. That is not to say Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl can't catch fire, which they're playing amazing right now, and carry them deep in the playoffs again because last year it's clear those two got hot and they went far. But in general, I'm never going to be sold on this team, and they still are going to have flaws, even if they go far in the playoffs like they did last year. They're just a flawedly built team. They don't have enough depth, not enough defense, not enough shutdown defensemen, and their goaltending is a mess. So they need to fix all of those, but I would start on defense because I think that is the biggest flaw for me, and that to me is the biggest problem with their roster when I look at projecting where they'll go in the playoffs. Yes, again, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are more than capable of carrying them far again, but if I'm going to predict what their undoing is going to be eventually, it's going to be defense, in my opinion. They're way too easy to walk through because they don't have that shutdown guy that's going to protect their team and protect their goaltending. Another reason as to why I believe their goaltending is so bad right now.
And I mean, you mentioned McDavid and Draisaitl numerous times. Kind of feels like that's all they got, man. Like even last postseason, those guys were on an absolute machine tear. I don't know what you want to call it. It was different. Like I don't think you're going to see that
They
from a
made me a
duo
lot of
in quite a while. And even Vander Kane too. I know he's not on the team yet, and that's a big piece that they lost to injury and a freak injury at that. But he's not there either, and he was a big force in the postseason as well. But other than those three guys, like who was between the pipes for them last year? Smith,
It was
who had a terrible series against Calgary, squeaked out a win, and then got absolutely torched against Colorado. Like
that was a great series. Made me a lot of money taking the over 6.5.
Well, that's the thing with this Edmonton team, right? And that's to Jared's point, where the defense, they got the offense and the two guys. The defense is going to be allowing all those goals, and it's just going to cancel each other out. That's why it's so mediocre. Adamo, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I knew maybe you were gonna. I think you were going to say it, but I'm just gonna,
Say
just flat out say it. The goaltending, that's like the biggest. I obviously their defense isn't great. Don't get me wrong, their defense is pretty poor, but they have NHL defensemen. Yes. Like Evan Bouchard, NHL player. As much as we hate to say it, Cody Ceci, it's an NHL player. Nurse, NHL player. Barry, NHL player. These are all good NHL players. They only have one NHL goalie, and his name is Stuart Skinner. They need another one. That's not a hot take, guys.
No, but I'm going to radio the poop out of it.
I'm gonna get radioed shit. It's not a hot take anymore. Jack Campbell hasn't been an NHL goaltender. Not last season, not this season. Like he's been less. Like guys, I didn't realize his stats were this bad. I knew they were bad. I didn't know they were this bad. Go on, Jared.
To be fair, I just wanted to add one thing. Like one sec, guys. Give me. I kind of blanked. Hold on. You know what? You take it. I completely blanked.
Man, the router just.
Yeah, go on.
I think ever since the calendar turned to 2022, Jack Campbell has been one of the worst goalies in the NHL.
Here, I'll pull up his stats.
And I said it last year. I said it in. I'll say it again. I said it in November. Didn't think he would be consistently this good. I expected a drop off. Obviously, didn't expect like the Russell Wilson type drop off if we want to refer to an NFL comparison. But he's been atrocious. And to give him $5 million a year for 5 years, you're not trading that contract. You could dead cap it, but then what's the point of that? Now you're just paying him to play on another team. Like you just don't have the money. Jared, take it away.
I got what I was gonna say. I don't know how I totally blanked out there, but what I was saying is
4 goals against.
Yeah.
In Jack Campbell's career, in his career trajectory, him being a good NHL goaltender is very much the outlier. He didn't even crack an NHL lineup as a certified goalie until he was about 30 years old. Like he just has never been a great goalie. He had a good few months with the Leafs, and I defended the shit out of the guy, but I can't defend him anymore. Like it is just such an outlier in his career of him being good. In general, he's never been an NHL guy. He's always been a guy that you maybe throw in there. In LA, he kind of got his opportunity once there was some injuries in net that kind of allowed him to play. And good for him. He ended up having, again, a good few games, a good little bit that allowed him to be seen as, oh, this guy can maybe do something. He got traded to the Leafs and had a little bit of a good tenure with the Leafs. Caught magic in the bottle, got hot. But he's just never been a consistent NHL guy. And the fact that he wasn't an NHL goalie until he was 30 years old is the most concerning thing to me. And he had about a year where he was all right and then is right back to being not an NHL goaltender. So you guys are completely right that this guy just cannot be the answer in Edmonton. And I didn't think he was going to be, but he just isn't.
Is he? Can I ask you? Oh, sorry.
Do you want?
I just wanted to pose a question here. Real
go
quick.
For it. Ask it. This will probably answer it.
Is Jack Campbell a bust? Because he was picked 10th overall in the draft. Like, is he?
He was an all-star somehow.
I think
because I'm also looking at this 2010 draft, and in terms of goaltending, it was pretty horrible. Like, Philip Grubauer went 4th round. He had 1 year, but that's just because Colorado's disgusting, and they turned Alexander Georgiev into an all-star, like they did. Louis Domingue was like, this was just a horrible draft for goaltending. But to be drafted 10th overall, like Dallas could have had a lot of better options or 11th overall. If you look at it, like, is he a bust?
Like you can make an argument the fact that he didn't become a consistent NHL starter or even just an NHL goaltender in general until he was into his late 20s and into his 30s. Like I think that's saying something. The fact that the guy just could not get a consistent start. Like to be honest, he was no question a bust for Dallas, the team who drafted him. But even after that, okay, he had a little
He
good
was a
tenure
backup with LA,
and,
man.
Yeah.
He's a backup.
I'm even
Yeah.
looking like so he got drafted out of the NTDP in 2009, 2010. He had a great year there, a 221 goals against. I mean, in 11 games, I'm so confused how he was drafted so high. Like, we thought Spencer Knight was drafted high with Florida, and he put up better numbers than Campbell did. But even when he went to the OHL, like a 380 goals against, 313 goals against,
Where did he play? Where did he play in the OHL, Evan?
Windsor and Sioux. Oh,
Hey.
fuck me. Oh,
That's why he landed into a Leafs jersey.
I just put 2 and 2 together.
Do you guys want his stats? Here are his stats since January 15th, 2022.
I'm very
maybe
interested to hear about this.
A little bit cherry picked, but whatever. This is 37 games. Okay. He had a 3.68 goals against average. So almost 4.
That's
with
gross.
a save percentage of .881.
Ooh. Yeah, man. He's at the basement for goaltending.
That is Michael Hutchinson. That's Michael Hutchinson level.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but it's
I feel
very,
bad.
Like a big reason as to why he's struggling so much is you hear the guy talking in interviews and whatever.
So
when
bad.
he starts losing, like you cannot have a goalie that when they start losing, they can't snap themselves out of it. Like he genuinely gets way too down on himself. And goaltending's all about confidence. And when your goalie is, oh, I let in that bad one, but it's more than just, oh, I let in a bad one, I'm going to bounce back. It's, I suck. I let in a bad one, I'm terrible, whatever. You just cannot have that in a starting goaltender. And it's very clear why it didn't work out, why he never lived up to that 11th overall potential. But he completely was a bust for Dallas. So we'll say that to answer Evan's question. But in general, the fact that he's only had little tenures of being good and a lot longer of being terrible with both LA and Toronto, where, yeah, when he's high on himself, he's very high on himself, and the guys at the top of the world can't lose. But as soon as that first loss comes, he can't pick himself out of it. Yep. Damn right. Like, you can't expect that goalie to take you far in the playoffs. And again, when he was playing well, I'm a guy who, I'll admit, I defended the guy way too much. And I'm like, when he's playing like this, I'm convinced he could take you far because I genuinely believe that when he's playing well,
when he was playing that well,
plays like an elite goaltender. But you can't have a goalie that is just simply incapable of bouncing back like that. And that's something I'd say to every goalie that is good, is they have that ability to bounce back. I mean, the stat that was floating all over the NHL in the playoffs last year was Vasilevsky had that stat. Every time he lost, he was guaranteed or essentially guaranteed to win the next game.
Oh, yeah, his record's insane.
So he can't pick himself back out of a loss, and you just can't have an NHL goalie like that, unfortunately. And I like the guy. I love his personality, but he just can't play in the NHL.
I will say, though, just to answer like the question that we were talking about with Ken Holland on the hot seat, I mean, look, he got there in 2019. So it's not like he's had a lot of time to really work with this team. When we think about a general manager, you gotta give him a little bit of time here just to even see what your roster looks like. Because obviously he's inheriting this team. He needs to see what he has. Unfortunately, they only have $1 million in cap space. So if they are going to make a move, it's going to have to match dollar for dollar, essentially. Now, they do have a lot of picks. If I'm a GM, I'm not trading my first round pick in this year's draft. I think it's way too deep. I think unless you're getting a superstar, I just think the 2023 draft is way too deep to make a trade with a first rounder.
And Florida Panthers.
Yeah. Maybe they could do something with that. But I agree with what you said, Jared, that they do need defense. The only thing I would rebuttal is the fact that it's a lot harder to find a defenseman that you're going to be able to, like, a championship level team isn't giving up a defenseman. So but they can't really afford Chikrin unless they give up Barry. But then at that point, are you really improving? like I don't know. Like, you could call Anaheim and see what you could get for John Klingberg. Again, he's making $7 million, so you're gonna have to give up. I don't know what you give up to match dollar for dollar, but you could probably get Klingberg for less just because he's on an expiring contract, and he could be a defenseman that you add. That could be a potential move there. I'm just trying to like other guys. I mean, I don't know, but I think it would just be easier to find a forward. As we've mentioned, their depth is just, I mean, we were talking about it before the show. Outside of Nugent, RNH, McDavid, and Draisaitl, I think the next best player is like Ryan McLeod with like 9 points.
Well,
And
Hyman, but again, Hyman isn't
oh,
scoring.
Hyman,
He's-
my
he's-
bad. I apologize. Hyman, Jew, love you. But other than that, like as we always say, we constantly say, I feel like we're having the same conversation over and over again. Like maybe, like I said, Ken Holland, maybe by the All-Star break, he's fired. Like if a move isn't made by then. But yeah, I think Klingberg could be an option. For them defensively, maybe even like I want to say Drew Doughty, just because I know he's had talks with about getting out of LA. Like that could be interesting. He just makes way too much.
That's it's not
So
realistic.
unless there's like some sort of retention
the
there.
only thing I think of is when the Leafs went out and got TJ Brody. I know it was something they did over the summer, but the fact that that was a name that wasn't really on a lot of the radars because he's not getting points and things like that, I think Ken Holland needs to kind of do his job and find a cheap guy with no offensive upside whatsoever, because those like the guys that are being talked about are your big names that
Vince
are your
Dunn.
David Chychrons and your see that's
Vince
interesting. Like
Dunn.
Podcast
they need
legend.
to find
Yes, sir.
a no name, a defensive guy who isn't going to score for them. Like Klingberg, the reason he makes so much money, yes, he is a good defenseman, but a lot of it is he also is capable of putting up a bit of numbers, and I just don't think that's what the Oilers need whatsoever. They have that in Darnell Nurse, and they need to counter it with a totally low event shutdown guy. And again, I personally, I don't really have a name up in my mind, but they need to do that.
They need a Marcus Pettersson type of guy from Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
like
need
your cheap
I mean, not it
shutdown
won't get
kind of
him.
Yeah, I mean Pittsburgh isn't going to trade him away. You know who? Jamie Alexiak would be so needed. He's a
Seattle
left.
won't move him.
It's worth
Why
a
would Seattle
shot.
move him?
I know they won't, but I'm just saying, like to pair with Darnell Nurse, how we're talking about, you need that bruiser, like Darnell Nurse with Jamie Alexiak.
Luke Shen, there you go.
Oh my
Literally,
God.
that is a name. Like that's the Leafs have been talking early. There's been a lot of Leafs rumors about they should get
Every
Luke Shen.
time-
I don't think the Leafs need a defenseman though. The Oilers need a
No, but every
defenseman.
time I watch a Vancouver game, he's in the penalty box. Like every time he's taking a penalty.
I think
But he's not. He's pretty good.
I will say one thing. I think it's fair to say that these guys need something more than just Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, whether that's on the back end, whether that's in goal, and whether that's developing from within, which I think is way too long of a duration. I think they need something now because their kind of aspirations are championship-ish. I think you can
And
put
their
them in that
AHL
realm.
team isn't that good. It's really, they don't got a lot of hope down there.
Yeah,
Besides
that's-
Evan Bouchard on the back end.
That's the
and like
thing
that-
about the trade route. It kind of
yeah.
speeds things up. Same thing about the signing route, which is what Ken Holland is responsible for doing. It speeds the process up. It makes it a lot more quicker to be more successful in a lesser period amount of time.
Yeah.
That's they don't have a very big window. You want to add something, Jay, before we hop off Edmonton?
Yeah, just before we wrap up, first of all, I think every year you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on your roster, you need to be contending for a Stanley Cup. And the fact that that Ken Holland has been unwilling to make any moves. I get that he's been put in an uncomfortable and a bad situation. The fact that every single year in his Oilers tenure has been a COVID affected year. Like he came here 1920, then at 2021, 21-22, and now 22-23. But in general, the fact that there have been these saving problems all throughout his tenure on this team. And I get it. COVID has made things more difficult, but you've now had 4 seasons to make an adjustment and fix these problems. And the fact that he has been unwilling to add a big depth guy, yes, he's added a few. Like I love the addition of Zach Hyman, but the fact that really that's the only major addition they've made on the forward front. On defense, they haven't really done anything. And yeah, they brought in Campbell, who they thought was going to be their savior. Newsflash, that isn't going to work for you. The fact that he hasn't been really making the right moves, I don't think he will be moved because I think they're going to give him a million chances just because he has the tenure, he has the Stanley Cups in his career. But if I were to be upper management, like I wouldn't stand for that. I personally, if you're asking me what I think they should do, I think they need a new face to actually make the changes that they've clearly shown Ken Holland has been unwilling to make. Again, I'd be shocked. I don't think it's happening this year. I really don't think it's happening in the next while. I think he's going to finish out his contract with the Oilers, and then they'll move on from there. But I think he has shown that his style is, I'm not going to make the big move when I need to. And I just don't think that's how you're going to win. That's not how you're going to address these problems that not just us who've analyzed this stuff and pick up on their problems. I talk to my little cousins who are getting into hockey and they pick apart the problems on the Oilers roster. Like, if my little cousins are picking apart the problems and their general manager can't recognize what needs to be changed, I'm sorry. That shouldn't be the guy running the ship here.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, listen, there's a lot of different ways they can go with it. Like I mentioned before, you can attack it on any different segment of your game, and I think you'll find improvements. You need to find improvements because it can't keep going on like this. This trade deadline for this team is going to be really big, and I think we have to watch out for all three of these things. Where the goaltending can be bolstered, depending on where that's at that certain period of time. The defense, I think a defensive defenseman work wonders for this group. And then forward, a guy who could score goals, pot 20, 30 in a season. I know they're hard to come by, and I know they're in high demand. I know they value a lot of money, but you need to find something because it can't just be two guys running the show when it matters most because they run out of gas. That's the thing about human beings. They can't do everything in a sport like hockey as well, where it's just so physical in the playoffs and it's totally different. It's its own thing. So they need something fast. They need something to work. And Ken Holland, for the sake of his job, I think we could throw it out there as well. Needs something to stick as well. But yeah, that'll do it for us. We talked Canes, we talked Leafs, we talked Edmonton. We talked for a while today, and I think we're going to end it over here. Thank you guys for tuning into the Leafs Line Podcast. Again, if you're new to the channel, look around. If you're still trying to catch up to World Juniors action, we got a bunch of videos on all the 10 teams listed below, so you can check that out. Hit the subscribe button, like this video if you can, and yeah, visit Dynasty Sports Network as well. It's on the page that you're seeing right now. You can type it into your web browser, search it up on social media. It'll all be there. We are all over dynastysportsnetwork.ca. But again, I'm your host, Mary Russo, Evan Davis, Donald Moley, and Jared Rotenberg. That is the Leafs Line Podcast. And thank you guys so much for joining in on the